Kellerman Show. Max Kellerman Show on ESPN Radio.
The Max Kellerman Show. What's going on, nerds? On ESPN Radio, ESPN News, the ESPN app, and Sirius XM Channel 80. And on your smart speaker, reach me at 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. Yes, Raj, I forgot to put on my TV mic. That is true. While I do that, let me just tell you that the Max Kellerman Show is presented by Progressive Insurance. Be a part of Max Kellerman Nation on the Dr. Pepper call-in line. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-ESPN. Say ESPN. ESPN Nation is presented by Dr. Pepper. It's official. College football's back, so is your favorite Dr. Pepper-loving college football town, Fansville. Head to a store near you to treat your inner college football fan to an ice-cold 20-ounce Dr. Pepper today. It's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. I'll tell you what, Raj, this is how I feel about the playoffs in baseball. Baseball is such a local sport that when your local team isn't in it, you don't care as much. Now, I have an interest in the Dodgers because when I was doing radio in L.A. for 6 years, I thought to myself, I could root for the Dodgers. They can be my NL team. They're from Brooklyn originally. Don Mattingly, the Yankees great, was the manager at the time. I always hated the Mets. Real New Yorker knows you love the Yankees, hate the Mets. Or vice versa if you're, brain damaged or something. But anyway, so I have interest in the Dodgers. But the truth of the matter is, when your team isn't in it,
but isn't this
the interest is not the same.
But isn't Kershaw a national narrative?
This is what I was getting to. See, Rod, you didn't know when to leave well enough.
Yeah.
The listener in their car right now is thinking, well, what about Kershaw? That's right.
I'm a listener.
I'm interested in Clayton Kershaw. And as Jeff Passan told me on First Take today, like I'm what's the opposite of damning with faint praise? I'm kind of criticizing him by comparing him to Peyton Manning and Wilt Chamberlain. Peyton Manning and Wilt Chamberlain, regular season, you could argue, are the best who ever played their sports. I don't even think it's an argument in football. Best regular season player of all time was pretty clearly Peyton Manning. I mean, no one watched Tom Brady and Peyton Manning in the regular season thought, I think Tom Brady's better than Peyton Manning. No one thought that. Peyton Manning was a machine until it mattered most. Now, Peyton Manning eventually got those 2 Super Bowls and won while he was still the great Peyton Manning and won while he was done and he rode the defense. But that really got the monkey off his back. Let me ask you this. How many people have you heard talk about Peyton Manning's the greatest quarterback of all time? See, now you can answer, Raj. You ever in a conversation nowadays and you're talking about the greatest quarterbacks ever or greatest football players ever, and someone says, what about Peyton Manning? Does that ever happen to you?
Not amongst my friends.
Now's the time. No one talks Peyton Manning as the best ever, as the greatest ever. Had it not been for the futility in the postseason, which occurred for most of his career, for especially the first half of his career, he was god-awful. He doesn't play defense. Really? Does he play offense? Because the Jets beat him 41-0 in the playoffs, as I recall. Nothing. Had receivers, a running game, an offensive line, everything. It hurts his standing all time, but he got the championships. So he can't, the conversation's not, but Peyton Manning could never win the big one. Dan Marino, remember before Tom Brady set the standard at 6, Dan Marino, the whole thing was, the knock against him was he couldn't even get the 1. Marino was like the original Peyton Manning. I know very different in terms of like what they did. Marino's incredible arm, but Marino, when your eyeballs were on him, you said, yeah, that's the best guy. But he didn't have the playoff success that Joe Montana did. Well, what happened if Walsh had Marino? But he didn't. Imagine Marino with a championship. Back then, he'd have been in that conversation. Is he the best ever, the greatest ever? But he didn't even get the 1. Peyton at least got those 2. One as the great Peyton Manning and another one. So the conversations about Peyton aren't, if only he could have won the championship. He got it. He got 2. But no one says he's the greatest of all time. Wilt Chamberlain put up ridiculous numbers, although when you normalize for the era, in fact, Michael Jordan put up better numbers than Wilt Chamberlain. But Wilt Chamberlain put up before advanced analytics, people smartened up. It's like averaged 50 points a game one season with 25 boards. And he won 2 championships with 2 different teams. But Bill Russell won 1 billion championships. And even if Russell didn't put up Chamberlain numbers. Yeah, but Jordan did, and he won 1 billion championships. No one talks about Wilt Chamberlain as the greatest of all time. Here and there, a few fans do. Misguided fans. And he got the championships. But Wilt, like Peyton Manning, spent too much of his career not doing what he had to do when it mattered most. Well, he wasn't on good enough teams. The knock on Wilt Chamberlain, if you read contemporary accounts and talk to people who watched him in that era, is if you really needed him to score, he decided to pass the ball. If you really needed him to share the ball, he decided to score. His instincts were bass-ackwards. Look, for whatever, but these are not guys like Dan Marino, or today I talk about James Harden. At least get the one off your back, right? Clayton Kershaw is hoping to join the ranks of Peyton Manning and Wilt Chamberlain. And let me tell you why, in fact, that's not good for Clayton Kershaw. I mean, certainly at this point, he'd like to be one of those guys and not a guy who just can't ever win it, right? Because Clayton Kershaw, the more I think about it, the more I think, had it not been for the playoff futility, he'd be considered the greatest starting pitcher who ever lived. You have certain pitchers, and I'm going to get to the game last night. You have certain pitchers like Sandy Koufax, who hit his prime and then had 4 years where, oh my God, that's the greatest pitcher of all time. He led the league in everything, every year, and except for the 1 year he was hurt. And Dean Chance was a boxing promoter who won the Cy Young the 1 year out of the 4 that Sandy Koufax didn't. And Dean Chance was like a carnival barker with the Angels. He used to tell me, oh, man, I can't repeat all the language he'd use, but I wasn't half the pitcher. Koufax, well, the only reason I got that MVP is because he got hurt. And even the Cy Young. And even then, because there was only one for both leagues back then. And even then, Koufax finished second or third. And he missed a bunch of starts. So you have guys like that. Then you have guys like Steve Carlton, who had these very long careers, incredible, and hit very high heights, like Koufax-level heights at his very best, but didn't do it year after year after year. It was like, Carlton was like, oh my God, that's one of the greatest seasons of all time, followed by, that's an all-star pitcher, but not one of the greatest we've ever seen. And then another one, it was more spread out. Randy Johnson was like that too, I would say. Clayton Kershaw did the Koufax basically over his whole career. Clayton Kershaw had like Koufax-level dominance in the regular season in his prime, but started out dominant and never really stopped. He had like a 6-year span where he was 3 times the Cy Young Award winner. I want to say once he came in second, third, and fifth, but in each of those seasons, you could say he's the best pitcher in baseball. In this season, he got hurt a little bit. He missed some starts. That's why he came in fifth. In this season, he came in second. He probably should have won it. It was like Koufax plus Steve Carlton. But in the playoffs, understand, if you think I'm exaggerating about Kershaw, of all pitchers post-dead ball era, like forget about before they started hitting home runs, 1919 and earlier. All pitchers post-dead ball era, all starting pitchers, Clayton Kershaw has by far the lowest career ERA, 2.43. That's number 1, as Clubber Lang said. I'm number 1. The closest pitcher to him is DeGrom, who has a much shorter career so far than Kershaw. The best ever over a long time now. But in the playoffs, he doesn't have a single round of the playoffs where his ERA is under 4. Worse yet, every round you go deeper, his ERA spikes up. So until last night. It was low 4s in the ALDS, high 4s in the NLDS, high 4s in the NLCS, and over 5 in the World Series. He threw 6 innings of 1-run ball with 1 walk and 8 strikeouts last night, which in today's game is great. In any game, in any day, it would have been a real good start. But today, 6 innings like, 7 2/3 back in the day. And they won game 1. It's a hell of a performance against a real good team. And he needed it in the worst kind of way. Now his World Series ERA is 4.6 something as opposed to 4.8 something in the NLCS. So now finally he's at least, you can't say anymore, as you progress in each stage, Kershaw gets worse and worse. And Jeff Passan on First Take made a good point. Hey, Kershaw after 6 innings falls off. Too often he would blow up in the 7th inning, and that hurt his ERA. Okay, but he has a lot of contemporaries who pitched into the 7th, 8th inning and didn't blow up. Anyway, the point is, I'm very happy to come on the air today and say Kershaw did it finally in the World Series in Game 1 and started maybe to get the monkey off his back. We're going to get more into it, 888-SAY-ESPN, but I'd like to welcome in now. It's so bad. Roy, how do you do this? Like if somebody, a very funny guy, Roy Wood Jr. By the way, that was Straight Talk Wireless, everything for less only at Walmart. Roy!
What's up, man?
Look at you on Zoom and everything.
Well, I'm trying to look all flash and dash. I like watching that game last night. Mm-hmm. I know this is a weird thing. Is it weird to watch baseball and root for the manager? I just want Dave Roberts to get one so they'll get off his back too. I know Kershaw been dealing with this for years and years, but low key, this might be Dave Roberts like managing for his job if they don't win it this year.
I hate Dave Roberts. He's been on this show, Roy, and he is my enemy. And I told him we're still enemies, even though we were nice to each other because he stole that base against the Yankees. We're sports enemies forever, Dave Roberts and me.
You know, as a Cubs fan, the Dodgers always gave us fits, but I'll say this. For all of the flair that they're talking about, but myself included, that, I like bat flips, I like a little bit of the preening and all of that. But I forgot how much I just enjoyed seeing baseball players smile. Mookie Betts is taking it back to Griffey rookie year with just grinning ear to ear in the middle of a game. And to see that enjoyment and just to see a player loving to play the game. Because, baseball players are real straight-laced and and I got to spit my tobacco.
Yeah, that's right.
And he's just out there having a good, it's like watching someone in the Little League World Series who's just happy to be there and also outperforming everybody.
Especially a guy like that. Like you see Mookie Betts in this day and age, just little dude. And these guys are monsters nowadays compared to the way they used to be. And other than Mike Trout, he's probably the best player in baseball. And unlike Mike Trout, he's now played deep into the postseason and won World Series. And you saw yesterday, kind of was the hero of the game without getting a hit. Just got on base, distracted the pitcher, stole a base, smart base running.
I was going back and forth with some people on Twitter, on baseball Twitter, and I can't think of a right fielder that he's 5'9", and his ups, just getting up for balls. Like Clemente is the only person. I'm not putting him in that same category or anything. I'm not getting fanatical, but Clemente was a short player. He wasn't over 6 feet, and he had the same range at the arm. It's like when you see short dudes overachieve on the field, just jumping on some Muggsy Bogues, Spud Webb type stuff. I think Spud was 5'2" or 5'3" or something like that.
How tall are you, Roy?
I'm 6'1". I'm 6'2" when I have Timberlands on. So give me my extra inch when I wear Timberlands.
See, I'm 5'11", so when I see it, I'm like, oh, look at that. I could have done that. I think that's like why Steph resonates with kids, right? Because kids are like, look, you don't have to run the fastest or jump the highest or be the tallest. I could somehow do that,
Yeah,
Mookie Betts gives you the feeling like if things would have broken different, you could have been a major leaguer.
You can be 5'9". All you need to do is know how to get a good jump on a ball and know parabolas and geometry know the field and also steal a couple bases and maybe hit, have a little bit of pop to your bat. You can make it, too.
I'm talking to Roy Wood Jr. You can see him on The Daily Show, of course, on Comedy Central. So, Roy, enough about baseball. No one cares about baseball anymore, apparently. I love it still, but it's super local. If the Yankees aren't in it, all right, okay, good. Go Kershaw. I want him to get the monkey off his back. What about football? Let's talk a little football. I know you're a Dolphins fan. I
Yes.
want to know how that happened. I guess Dan Marino is my guess, right?
Well, let's start Dan Marino.
Before we even, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, no, you go ahead. You go ahead.
No. Let's start with the Dolphins. They're starting Tua in place of Ryan Fitzpatrick, even though they're 3-3. What do you think of that? You're Dolphins.
You got to get the boy in there. He's got to get some reps. Sooner or later, he has to start learning the game of football, and it's better that he learn it when there's lower expectations. I think the Dolphins still have a pretty stacked. We got a bunch of draft picks still in our back pocket for 21 and 22. And that's when it's going to start being, all right, we'll be in like the third or fourth year of the Flores project. And at that point, it's like, all right, coach, are we winners or not? So if Tua's the future, then go ahead and start the future. I saw where Fitzpatrick was a little, hurt by it, and as well he should be. Starters want to start, and he's a competitive player, but I understand completely why coach made the decision. I ended up a Dolphins fan because I grew up in Alabama, and that was regional coverage. Let me talk to the kids real quick. Hey, kids, there was a time when you only got one football game at 1 o'clock, and it was the only game you were allowed to watch. Like, there was no coverage of all the games. And so in the South, the Dolphins were the only decent football team in the mid to late 80s. Saints suck, Bucks
How you
suck,
wind up with the Cubs?
Falcons
The
suck.
Dolphins and the Cubs is such a worse. It's such a
TV.
weird combination. Dolphins Cubs.
TV. You can like whoever you want to like in baseball, Max, but you ain't going to see them on TV till they play the Cubs or the Braves. And I couldn't watch the Braves because they came on at night and my dad wouldn't come up off the remote.
That's what I was going to ask. That's what I was going to ask,
Cubs were
because
day games,
Superstation
baby.
TBS was what, usually like if you read, like if you were going to have an out of market team, if it wasn't the Yankees, it'd be, or the Cardinals once upon a time, because if you were west of the Mississippi, that's the only team you got on the radio, it'd be the Braves. So, but your dad took the remote at night, huh?
I would come home after school. I would watch the back half of the Cubs day game, and then I would watch the Disney afternoon. That was watch, rinse, repeat my entire life. Shout out to DuckTales. They held me down.
So wait, DuckTales, which one was that? Was that the Donald Duck one?
No, it was Donald Duck's nephews who went to go live with Scrooge McDuck. Huey, Dewey, and Louie.
Yeah, right, Scrooge McDuck. That's what I mean. I mean, was it Donald Duck as opposed to like Daffy Duck? I'm trying to distinguish between the ducks. We're in Donald's world. Okay, DuckTales, right. I remember Scrooge McDuck, of course.
Yeah, he was the homie,
all right,
man. Scrooge McDuck and his lucky dime.
Okay, so here's the thing I like about Brian Flores. That team, remember last year, beginning of last year, we were like, boy, that might be the worst NFL team of all time. They quit, this and that. By the end of the year, they beat the Patriots in the game the Patriots really needed to have. Now they're sitting at 3-3. And I agree with you. You got to get Tua in there. You got to start developing the young guy. He is a special talent, not one of these dudes you're kind of hoping works out, but a dude you could see was special from the earliest time in college.
Fact check me on it, but I think the Dolphins ended 7-9 last year, which I believe was an overachievement. And so to go into this year, I think it was just, what are the other pieces that you're going to build around Tua? Of course, the first question was always going to be Tua's health, and would he be healthy enough to even be in a position to start, taking his lumps this early in the season. But I think if he's healthy, you have to get him out there so that next year you also have to remember, we're in the AFC East. There's only 3 teams in the East, So all we have to do is be better than the Bills. We don't know what Cam Newton's going to do. I feel like Cam Newton, if he does well enough, he's auditioning for a job somewhere else in the league if he doesn't like playing under Belichick's system. So the Patriots might be on a new quarterback. Fitzpatrick might end up in New England for all we know. And the Jets are a non-factor. I know Jets fans are screaming at the speakers right now saying that there's 4 teams in the East. There's 3.
Right. No, of course.
9-7 could win that division is what I'm saying next year.
Wow, listen, I root for the Giants. A 5-win team might come out of that division. Before I let you go, the Cowboys, America's team, Roy. I say it's time for a change. It's a mess.
Are they still America's team? At what point do we? I mean to cut off your question, but at what point do we revote on America's team? You don't just get to keep being America's team.
Coming up in a couple of weeks.
Well, that's a different team. I'm talking about just a regular football poll.
I was just thinking an America's team that's a mess and needing a change.
I'll say this about the Cowboys. I love the players, but I also love seeing Jerry Jones sad because he thinks he knows everything, and that makes me, as a sports fan, it just makes me happy. It feels good to see someone who thinks they have it all figured out, sitting in that suite, all dumbfounded, down there on the field, intimidating the players. Go back up in the box, Jerry. But it's also interesting that wasn't it starting to leak that some of the players are saying that the coaches don't know what they're doing?
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. The player, the coaches aren't teaching us anything. They're not. But here's the thing that strikes me, and Ryan Clark said it on TV this morning on ESPN, on Get Up and on First Take. Like Dak Prescott, who you thought you knew was pretty good, is even better than you understood because he goes down and 5 minutes later, not only can't they score a point, but everyone's at everyone's throats. Like the whole thing is unraveling. Boy, Dak is Mike McCarthy and Andy Dalton just made Dak some money, Roy.
Do you think the worse the Cowboys are, the more money Dak can now negotiate for? Like, as horrible as the injury was, I would hope that he's in a position to get more money than what he turned down the first time, because it's really exposed just how important he was. You thought I was this important? Nah, dog, I'm this important.
Well, you can see him, of course, on The Daily Show, where he's funny. I don't know, Roy. You had like one or two funny little almost moments here today, but that's not funny, Roy Wood. Funny Roy Wood is on The Daily Show. That guy's hilarious.
I'm in my serious mode. I got plants in the background.
I see.
Okay.
Once you see plants, or even Roy, better yet, books. If you're in the library setting or a fireplace, that says serious.
Look how smart I am. Look at all these books behind me. You didn't read them. Stop lying.
Yeah.
I'm
Do you
tired
think
of the
people
book
really
fronting.
carefully choose the books and the titles so they can show you how smart they are or what they're into? Right? I think that probably happens.
Coding the books. There's people making the books. I put all my yellow books on this shelf, all my blue books. You didn't start doing that until the pandemic shut down everything. You're trying to accent
You didn't
your walls.
read
Stop
War
it.
and Peace.
You just bought
You
12
didn't read
blue
War and
books
Peace and
even out
Moby
your
Dick.
shelf.
Get out of here. Yeah. Roy Wood, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Roy. Appreciate it.
A pleasure, Max.
The Max Kellerman Show is presented by Progressive Insurance. Progressive, celebrating 8 years of donating cars to veterans in need. Learn more at keystoprogress.com. After getting embarrassed on Monday Night Football, things just got worse for the Cowboys. While you can't believe everything on social media these days, you can believe it's possible to spend Sirius XM Channel 80 and on your smart speaker. Reach me at 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Cowboys fans and Cowboys haters, I'm going to take some of your calls. The Max Kellerman Show is presented by Progressive Insurance. All guests join us in the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. ESPN Investigates Season 2. The Running Man podcast is now available. Subscribe and listen wherever you get your podcasts. So, Cowboys players say the coaches aren't good at their jobs following a 38-10 loss to Arizona on Monday night. Frustration seems to be boiling over in the Dallas Cowboys locker room. Per NFL Network's Jane Slater, an unnamed Cowboys player said members of the coaching staff, quote, aren't good at their jobs, end quote, and realize there are a lot of players on a football team. If you want to find a quote, a lot of times you can. Another player said the coaches are, quote, totally unprepared. They don't teach. They don't have any sense of adjusting on the fly, end quote. And yet, even though there are a lot of players, and if you want to find a quote, you can, notice when Dak was quarterbacking this team, this didn't happen. There was a lot of optimism around the Cowboys coming into the season, as there usually is, because of the offensive talent. Dallas finished first in total yards per game, second in Football Outsiders' offensive DVOA, and sixth in points scored last season under first-year offensive coordinator Kellen Moore in 2019. Now, let me tell you a little story. And as a Giants fan, I hope that Jerry Jones keeps on doing what he's been doing. If there's a Super Bowl played this year, they get through the COVID situation and somehow get to a Super Bowl and they play it and someone wins it, this will be the 25th season since the Cowboys' last Super Bowl. A quarter century for the so-called America's team. A quarter century. Why is that? Why is it that every year we have such high hopes for the Cowboys? Like, the team is covered more than any other. There was a snake oil salesman named Tex Schramm once upon a time who said, for the Cowboys, who came up with the publicity stunt. Hey, we're going to call it America's team. And it caught on. Why not? Located right in the middle of the country, right? In a huge state. In a big football state. The Dallas Cowboys. They captured the American imagination, especially when they started winning Super Bowls. And they've won 5 in their history. Second most to the Steelers, 6. And the Patriots, 6 now, of course. Jerry Jones buys the team. And by the way, Jimmy Johnson, the head coach, way back in the day, took over a 1-win team. Like when his first season, I think they had 1 win. And within a couple years, they won the Super Bowl. And then another. And Jerry Jones couldn't take the fact that Jimmy Johnson was getting so much credit. Big ego Jimmy Johnson. The press loved him, and his team was succeeding. And I think Jerry wanted to show it's not Jimmy Johnson. So he fires Jimmy Johnson and hires Barry Switzer, college coach, of course. And Switzer wins 1 more, which it was really Jimmy Johnson's team still. He won another Super Bowl with Jimmy Johnson's team. And then that was it. No more Super Bowls for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, why do we think they always have a chance? Because they're the most covered team. So we know their players. If I tell you Lyle Collins, no, by the way, a lot of these guys are hurt. Travis Frederick is gone, right? He's retired, the center. If I tell you Lyle Collins or Zach Martin, you know the names if you're a football fan. The Cowboys aren't your team, but you know their offensive line? So because, and not to mention the skills position players, so because they're more covered, you are more familiar with the players. And because you're more familiar with them, they're branded in your mind as actual players, not just Jags, just a guy. They're more than that to you. And as a consequence, you overrate them. Both sides of the ball, by the way. The Cowboys were favored by some to win the Super Bowl last year. They were 8-8. Eagles had everyone missing off the team, and they still won the division. And then this year, some people thought they were going to be even better. They have 1 win. See, here's the problem. There were, we asked on First Take today, is it the coaches or the players? It's neither. It's the owner and the GM. The owner must fire the GM. The problem is, it's him. Jerry Jones has to take himself into a room and sit himself down and say, Jerry, I never want to have this conversation. It's a very difficult conversation to have. And then he could say, but Jerry, what'd I do? And then Jerry can say, Jerry, we're going to move in a different direction. We got to move in another direction. It's best for the franchise. Got to do it. Because it's not the coach or the player. Here's the problem. Jerry Jones looked at this team and thought, we're right there. We're going to win now. The problem is the guy I handpicked for the head coaching job, he's not the guy. Neither is a play caller. That's what Kellen Moore is doing there. Nor is kind of a CEO, like the leader of the organization. So I need to find someone, because Kellen Moore is going to call the plays, right? I need to find someone who can at least lead a team, give me a good feel, like who has pedigree. I can sell it to the fan base. He has a Super Bowl championship, and he just gives you the sense of a football coach. And by the way, he has to embrace analytics nowadays, right? Or at least publicly say, now I get it. But also, I don't want him getting any credit in case we win. And I need to be able to push him around, so it can't be a guy with leverage who's highly sought after. It's a guy who no one was going to hire. Mike McCarthy. So he hires Mike McCarthy, who, now I get it, I should look at analytics. He doesn't know anything about analytics. But he gives you a good sense that he's like the CEO of the organization. The Dallas Cowboys were not ready to win because Jerry and Steven overrate their drafting and development. They're not bad. They're much worse GMs than the combination of Jerry and Steven, but they're far from elite. But they think they're elite, and sometimes we think that their talent is elite because we're more familiar with them. The problem's not the coach, and the problem's not the players. The problem is the general manager, Jerry Jones. Mitch in Fort Worth, you're on the Max Kellerman Show, ESPN Radio.
Yeah, Max, I'm all fired up about this America's team. I am 58 years old, and I've heard that since I was a kid. Nobody told me. I must have been out of the country. I don't know. And that's same with the Atlanta Braves. I don't know if they still feel themselves as America's team. Man, I'm from Southern California, and I've been a diehard Patriots fan, go figure, since I was like 8 years old. But this whole American...
A diehard what fan? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. A diehard what
Patriots fan? Since I was eight years old. I'm not a bandwagon. I suffered with them through Grogan. I suffered with them through everybody. 85 Chicago Bear debacle. Anyway, that's beside the point. I digress. But this whole America's team, number one, they play in Arlington. They should be called the Arlington Cowboys. Not to mention their division is so weak, it's an embarrassment. 2-4 in your first place. Are you kidding me with that? What was it?
The Arlington Cowboys. Mitch, you know what? I like it.
That?
I'm gonna let's call them the Arlington Cowboys from now on until they get their act together.
Absolutely. And then when those shots come back from Monday Night Football, ESPN, Thursday Night Football, and they say, "Oh, Dallas." They should, I think the mayor got into a little bidding contest with the network one time because they refused to say Arlington. But anyway, Max, that's all I got to say. Nobody told me.
All right. Well, Mitch, good call. And let me tell you, you gave me another good idea as a Giants fan. With the Giants in this kind of state. In fact, the actual state they play in is New Jersey. They're the New Jersey Giants until further notice. It's the Arlington Cowboys and the New Jersey Giants. I feel like Eddie Murphy in Coming to America. I renounce my throne. We renounce the Giants and the Jets. Until they get their act together. They're laughingstocks right now. Well, listen, the Braves were called America's team because they were Superstation TBS, right? So they were broadcast all over the country at a time where really no one else was. I used to catch every Braves game. Whenever the Yankees weren't on, I could watch the Braves. News from Max Kellerman Nation. Mitch just hit us up on the Dr. Pepper call-in line to discuss the Arlington Cowboys. Do the Rockets need to trade Harden or Westbrook? We talked about it on First Take. We're going to talk about it here. No Doubt is next. It's champion versus champion at UFC 254 when Habib takes on Gaethje. Coming this Saturday, October 24th, at a special start time of 2 p.m. Eastern on ESPN+. The Max Kellerman Show on ESPN Radio, ESPN News, the ESPN app, and SiriusXM Channel 80. And on your smart speaker, reach me at 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Protect your neck. That's right, that ushered in a whole new era. The Max Kellerman Show is brought to you by Shell. Pennzoil synthetic motor oils are made from natural gas. It gives you unbeatable engine protection. The proof is in the Pennzoil, based on Sequence 4A wear test using SAE 5W30. I'm going to get right down to it.
We got you covered.
Let me tell you what I think it means.
No doubt.
One win? You tell me Hurts would have no wins? So there's no doubt. I can't believe after I said I was going to say no doubt or Nas on it, once again I said sure. It's no doubt. All right. Did Kershaw silence his critics? And I'm going to take calls. Kellerman Show on ESPN Radio, ESPN News, the ESPN app, and SiriusXM Channel 80. And on your smart speaker, reach me at 888-SAY-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. The Max Kellerman Show is presented by Progressive Insurance. All guests join me on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. All right, a lot to do. I got my NFL power rankings coming up. I want to get back into Clayton Kershaw and Wilt Chamberlain and Peyton Manning, by the way. That's who I'm comparing them to. And I got to get back into this James Harden thing because the way, Raj, you presented it in No Doubt, I was not able to tell you what I was really thinking. It's your fault. They say don't point a finger at someone because if you do, there are three fingers pointing back at you. But as I tell you, look at how, if you can see on the simulcast, when I point my finger, I splay my other fingers like this.
Yes.
No fingers are pointing at me.
No,
and if there were people around me, they would scattershot, just hit people around me instead of me.
Yeah, because it clearly wasn't your fault since we broke late the previous segment and it had a short No Doubt. That was no way your fault.
I like the sound of my own voice, so sue me. Listen, first Clayton Kershaw. He tosses 6 dominant innings as the Dodgers beat the Rays. 6 innings nowadays with 1 run and 8 strikeouts. It's really, really good. Kevin Cash said about Kershaw he was dealing. Dave Roberts, obviously the Dodgers manager, who is my enemy. Dave Roberts and I are enemies. He didn't know about it, but he knows about it now because he came on this show and we had a very nice talk. But when he thought it was like all good at the end, I had to let him know we are enemies. He stole that base on my Yankees in 2004. And the Red Sox, I don't remember anything after that. Anyway, why Dave Roberts kept Kershaw into the sixth.
I thought he was throwing the baseball well, so he was going to go back out there until we started adding on some more runs, but I felt good the way he was throwing the baseball.
Well, shut up, Dave Roberts. I hate you. If only not for him, Raj, the Yankees would have won in 04 and probably beaten the Cardinals too. Anyway, the point about Kershaw is this. He has an argument as the greatest regular season pitcher who ever lived. In the modern era, post-dead ball era, meaning 1920 and later. 1920 and later, talking about 100 years already. A century. No starting pitcher had a lower ERA for his career. For his career, he has basically the lowest ERA in history. And it's not just, as I mentioned, like there are great lefties and great starting pitchers like Steve Carlton, who this season and that season, he was as good as anyone ever. But they were spread out. In between, he was pretty good. He had a great season here, a very good one there. Of course, he's an excellent pitcher. He's never terrible. But it's not like the concentrated prime of, say, Sandy Koufax or Pedro Martinez, where you go, oh my God, those 5 years, whew. Kershaw has had a prime like Koufax or Pedro or someone like that, but he's also had longevity more like, I mean, not yet because he's not done yet, but more like Steve Carlton or Randy Johnson. He has a really good argument that he's the greatest regular, or by the time his career is over, he'll have a really good argument. Potentially, we have to see how the next few years play out, that he's the greatest starting pitcher who ever lived in the regular season. You know who else has that argument? Wilt Chamberlain, regular season. Ooh, he might be the best player ever. Peyton Manning, regular season. Best football player of all time. How about in the playoffs? Anyone really still talk about Wilt Chamberlain or Peyton Manning as the greatest of all time? No. Raj, I know you like Wilt, but you're out of your mind. No, they never come up in the conversation.
Well,
when you talk about the greatest ever in basketball,
all over it.
Well, Jordan's actually ahead of him, but even in the stats. But all you have to when you talk about the greatest ever in basketball, it comes down to, is it Jordan or whoever's hot at the time, like Kobe in his prime, or now LeBron? Who had the greatest career? Is it Kareem in the modern era or Bill Russell in the pre-modern era, right? When do you hear Wilt? Because he won 2 championships, by the way, but not enough to compete at the very top of the sport. If you had a Mount Rushmore of the NBA, would Wilt even be on it? Because Jordan would be on it, and LeBron would be on it, and Bill Russell would be on it, and I think Kareem would probably round it out. Peyton Manning, best football player I've ever seen in the regular season. And I saw Lawrence Taylor in his prime, and Aaron Rodgers, and whoever else you want to talk about. But in the regular season, no one watching Peyton and Brady, who were contemporaries, ever said, Tom Brady's better than Peyton Manning in the regular season. Because he wasn't. Peyton Manning was better than Tom Brady. Easily, by the way. Better than everybody. Then it mattered most. In the playoffs, Peyton Manning, what? That's the same guy? He's terrible. And Peyton Manning eventually, over time, got over it and started, quarterbacking better. And while he was still a beast, won a Super Bowl. And then at the end of his career, when he wasn't good anymore, won another one. So Peyton Manning and Wilt Chamberlain don't go down in history as players who never won championships. They got that monkey off their back. But they also don't go down in the debates as to who is the greatest to ever do it. Clayton Kershaw is in that Peyton Manning-Wilt Chamberlain conversation. And hopefully he'll get the monkey off his back in these playoffs, in this World Series. So far, so good. I mean, really, if he took the ball 3 times and did what he just did in Game 7 instead of Game 1, that would go a long way, right? But even if he wins a World Series or 2, he'll be in that Peyton Manning-Wilt Chamberlain category. And for those who would say, as Jeff Passan did today on First Take, oh, wow, that's really a bad thing to be. That's a bad argument to make that's no good. Well, I understand that. But what I mean is, if you are the best who ever lived normally, but you're not in the greatest of all time conversation because when it mattered most, you choked too much, you don't want to be on that list. I mean, Peyton Manning and Wilt Chamberlain is a great list to be on. And if Kershaw wins the World Series right now and pitches well, as he did in Game 1, he'll join that kind of a list. More than I ever did. More than the vast majority of people who ever lived on planet Earth have never achieved at that level. But it's not the greatest of all time conversation, is it? That's real. I mean, like, I'd love to tell you, like, and I hate being this guy today because I want to, excellent performance by Clayton Kershaw. Understand, the Dodgers, Sandy Koufax was on 4 World Series champion teams. But 2 of them, he wasn't really the great Koufax anymore. 2 of them in the 60s, when they were in L.A., he was. They won a lot because of him. He pitched 57 World Series innings. I thought it was 40-something. I looked it up, 57. Had a .95 ERA. And his Dodgers won 2 championships with him as the ace. Fernando Valenzuela in 1981 set the world on fire, and in the playoffs pitched great. They won the championship. Oral Hershiser in 88 came, it was supposed to be Danny Jackson or David Cohn winning the Cy Young that year. Hershiser came out of nowhere to win it. He just kept throwing shutouts, and that extended into the playoffs. They won the World Series. These Dodgers haven't won any yet because Kershaw has choked too many times. If this is an indication, what he did in Game 1, that he can get it together, the Dodgers will surely win the World Series. It doesn't make up for all the times he choked, just as Peyton's and Wilt's didn't. But it does get you off that all-time chokers list, doesn't it? Jermaine in Toronto, you're on the Max Kellerman Show, ESPN Radio.
How you doing, sir?
Go ahead.
Yes. So about this greatest of all time topic, especially for the NBA, I always find it strange that Tim Duncan is never mentioned in that group. When he's won his 5 rings, he beat Kobe and Shaq, and he beat LeBron James twice in the finals.
I agree with you. I think he's not in the conversation for very greatest ever. You're right. But he is considered the greatest power forward ever, and he's certainly one of the top 10 centers ever. An interesting thing is, Jim Lampley, who watched these guys, in their primes, who he told me Tim Duncan was? He said he was a modern-day Bill Russell. And Bill Russell gets talked about a lot as the greatest ever, pre-modern. So maybe you're right. Maybe Tim Duncan is still underrated. I think, though, that when you watch Tim Duncan, who was a contemporary of Shaq and Kobe's, there was, I value peak performance above career accomplishment. Like, if you had a 4 or 5 level year prime, and that prime was the best ever, I think that really means you're the best ever. I think Koufax is the greatest ever. Michael Jordan's the greatest ever. I think that's what we really mean, as opposed to compiling numbers. Like Hank Aaron was the all-time clean home run champ, but I never considered him the greatest home run hitter of all time because he did it just by being among the best forever. He was never like, that's the best player in baseball. And so I think that's why I put Shaq and Kobe a little bit ahead of Duncan. I didn't get the feeling at Duncan's very best he was right there, but if I had to choose, I'd take Shaq and Kobe. Michael in Long Island, you're on the Max Kellerman Show.
Hey, Max, what's up? I was wondering, talking about football, if the Giants were to go on and win tomorrow with how bad the division is, do you think we should be buyers at the trade deadline, go after a running back of the whole?
Well, for what? But for what? You want to make the playoffs with 5 wins this year? And so what's all just results in is a worse draft pick. Not that it'll much matter because the Giants will screw it up anyway if Gettleman's the GM. But whoever comes out of the NFC East is getting blown out in the first round. I don't think it's some great prize this year. This is an awful division, and the Giants compete hard. I like that. I'll give that to Joe Judge. They compete hard, but they don't get results. Look, before I move on, and I'm going to get to the power rankings in a second, Raj. I was talking about James Harden on First Take today, and the question was because Fertitta, the owner, said we're not trading Harden or Westbrook, and you can't say that before you put a GM in place. Maybe the GM says no, that we could, but I want to focus in on James Harden. Let me tell you who can't be traded. If a player came up with a franchise and only ever had that franchise's uniform on and won multiple championships with that franchise, maybe that player you don't trade or you don't let sign with another team. So let me tell you who I mean. Kobe Bryant. Jeannie Buss was never going to let Kobe Bryant put on another jersey. She gave him a 2-year, $50 million contract without seeing him play off an Achilles, and he was clearly not the same. And the Lakers were awful. But Jeannie told me at the time, she said, look, the league needs to know. And that's not why she did it. I even told her, like, come on, you're just doing it because it's the right thing to do. But the rationale was, we're sending a powerful message. This is how the Lakers take care of our own. She might not have been wrong. Derek Jeter, his last year with the Yankees, cost them a trip to the playoffs. They played him at shortstop and let him off. He wasn't a good enough leadoff hitter anymore, and he couldn't play defense anymore. And if you replace him with an average shortstop, they probably make the playoffs that year. It's Derek Jeter. It's Kobe Bryant. They only ever had the Yankees and Lakers uniform on, and they each won 5 championships. I get that. That's not James Harden. James Harden didn't come up with the Rockets. James Harden hasn't won any championships for the Rockets. So yes, you can trade James Harden if and only if you get equal value. And that's hard to do. If you don't trade him, it's because nothing presented itself where you got equal value. The history of the NBA is the winner of the trade between two teams is the team that gets the better player. So go find a better player than James Harden. Giannis is a lot younger and I think better. If they could get Giannis Antetokounmpo for Harden, I would do it. The point is, Fertitta shouldn't be saying we're not going to trade either guy. If you don't trade Harden, it's because you couldn't get equal value. But not because he's this icon who's untouchable. He's not. Now it's time for my NFL Power Rankings. Week 7. Do we have imaging on this? It's called imaging in the business, everybody. Oh, you want me to go to the Dr. Pepper call-in line? Oh, they're in my ear saying, Dr. Pepper, Dr. Pepper. Yeah, I like Dr. Pepper. What about it? News from Max Kellerman Nation. Michael hit us up on the Dr. Pepper call-in line. He asked me about something that I responded to. I don't even remember what it was anymore. Now I have to pause for imaging.
No bias.
I really like when they play sound.
Just facts.
Don't get it crooked here. What I'm saying.
Max's NFL Power Rankings.
I have to ask a question before I get to this, Raj. Why is it called imaging? We're on the radio.
Because it leaves an image for your ears, like a visual audio image, you know?
It leaves an image in your mind through your ears.
Yeah.
I could see that.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
All right.
So what do we got? We got my NFL Week 7 Power Rankings. Coming in
That's
at
not
number
how it
5.
Goes. No. No, first I'll remind you the image you left for us last week, which you had the Bears at number 5. Who is at number 5 this week, Max? We're 7 weeks in. You should have this down by now.
Surely the Green Bay Packers losing to the Bucs, and the way they did, the Bucs just trounced them. Look at that defense. Brady, not making any mistakes. 170 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Bill Parcells would have been proud of Phil Simms in 1984 for that line. The point is, surely the Bucs must be in the top 5, right?
Sure.
Well, they're not at 5. I still got the Bears at 5. How many losses do the Bucs have on the season so far?
Gosh, 2 or 3, right?
2.
2.
How many losses do the Bears have? 1.
Just 1.
Bears have 1 loss. By the way, the Bears just beat the Bucs. So if one team has 2 losses, the other has 1, and the 1-loss team has already beaten the 2-loss team, I'm not putting the 2-loss team ahead of the 1-loss team.
Right.
The Bears are still at 5.
Ooh.
You know who's at 4? Maybe I did put them ahead, right, Raj?
Yeah.
Maybe I put them ahead.
Maybe.
Who did I have 4 last week?
Last week you had the Titans. They did pretty well this weekend. Who do you got number 4 now?
Surely the Bucs haven't beaten the Packers.
Yeah, they got to make their debut.
Should be on the list somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Wrong, I have the Packers,
What?
who I had second last week. Oh. That's right. They lost to the Bucs. It was a bad loss. It's the only loss of the season. Davante Adams has just gotten back. I felt Rodgers was trying to force things to him a little bit to get him back in the flow. He was better off when he was spreading the ball around to the no-name receivers in recent weeks. I think once Davante Adams gets healthy, obviously the team's even better off for it. I'm not going to hold the 1 loss against them to the point where I dropped them from 2 to off the list. It's their only loss of the season. They've beaten the Saints, who, by the way, beat the Bucs.
Yeah.
And they also have 2 divisional wins. The Packers are at 4.
All right, fine.
Who do I have at 3?
Well, last week at number 3, you had the Seattle Seahawks. So who do you got this week?
the Tennessee Titans.
Wow.
The Titans remain undefeated. Derrick Henry's running roughshod over the league, picking up where he left off last year.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan Tannehill is kind of on the outskirts of the MVP conversation. This team looks like it means business. Last week at all?
Who?
They're third this week.
Yes, they were. They were 4 last week.
Right. Well, they moved up a notch to 3. All right. Who do I have at 2?
And did you get on Stephen A. Smith for stealing our segment that no one's ever done and just renaming it? Did you get on him for doing that? Who does power rankings?
Yes, it's very interesting. How dare he?
Yes.
No one's ever power ranked football teams before. We come up with this brilliant idea, now everyone's ripping us off.
Let's try and change the name. They ain't slick. All right, last week, number 2 were the Packers. Who do you got this week?
Seattle Seahawks, Raj. The Seahawks replaced the Packers at 2. They remain undefeated. Russell Wilson is now by himself in first place in the MVP race.
Mm-hmm.
I still don't like that defense, but they have playmakers on the defense, and they have stiffened up a little in the red zone compared to, like, they give up a lot of yards and a lot of points, but maybe not quite as many points as you'd expect given the yards they give up. But the main thing is Russell Wilson, receivers, a running game. They protect them better than they did several years ago when they weren't investing at all in the O-line. The Seahawks are number 2.
All right.
Which leaves...
Yeah, behind the running game, now they got another weapon. Oh, boy, I imagine they're number 1 again. You called it. You weren't going to move them down after a loss. Tell them about it.
The Kansas City Chiefs. Ladies and gentlemen, do you remember when Clyde Edwards-Helaire was billed as a guy who's going to be this dynamic passing option out of the backfield, an all-purpose back? It wasn't like he's going to control time of possession. But now what do you do? Because, like, Patrick Mahomes with Tyreek Hill, that whole receiving core, plus Travis Kelce, plus now when you add Le'Veon Bell, 2 backs who can catch passes like wideouts, not just receivers, but you can split them out wide. And, you know, you try to protect against that. They're like, okay, fine, here, Clyde, take the ball, run it. It's like, how do you beat this team with the money on the line? It's bad news for the NFL. The Chiefs remain, for me, my favorites to win the Super Bowl. To be clear, not the odds-on favorites. Not the team I say, well, no one's better than 50-50 against everyone, against the entire league. So I just think they have the best chance out of any team. Every year of my life, that's what I've thought about football. There's no one team that's favorites against the field. But this team has the best chance against the field. Nope, I'm saying I'm taking the Chiefs against the field. I think they have a better than 50-50 chance to win the Super Bowl since the season started. I feel no different today. If anything, I'd say I feel the same because I'm a little discouraged about the defensive performance against the Raiders, but given what they can do now with the running game, this is impossible. By the way, we have undefeated heavyweight bout in the NFL this Sunday. You don't listen. And you know what my favorite thing is? When you have a fastball pitcher against a fastball hitter, and the pitcher's like, all right, country hardball, here it is. The Titans with Derrick Henry, they're going to run that ball. The Steelers won't let you run. So they lost to they trounced the Browns in 80. And on your smart speaker, 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776, the Max Kellerman Show is presented by Progressive Insurance. All guests join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Who comes out undefeated in this heavyweight slugfest between the Steelers and Titans? Steelers going to Tennessee. Well, the Titans, it's interesting. They start this year. Let's take it back to last year even. The Steelers, because Mike Tomlin is their coach, and because they made that move for Minka Fitzpatrick, went 8-8 without Ben Roethlisberger or his backup or the third-string quarterback at a certain point. Still went 8-8. That's a well-coached team and motivated team. Tennessee ends maybe Tomlin's best coaching performance, all things considered. And he has in a Hall of Fame coaching career. Tennessee ends the year by going on a run, literally, through the Patriots in the playoffs, and they eventually run into the Chiefs, and they lose, as everyone did, to the Chiefs last year. The Chiefs won the Super Bowl. But they start this year, and the Steelers have had a really soft schedule. And so they've been winning more comfortably than the Titans. But it's not like the Titans have played a brutal schedule either. And listen to what they've done so far. They beat the Broncos by less than a field goal, 16-14. Broncos are not great, obviously. They beat the Jags by a field goal, 33-30. The Jaguars are not good. They beat the Vikings by less than a field goal, a single point, 31-30. Vikings are having a bad year without Stefanski. Kirk Cousins looks lost. But heading into the season, the Vikings look competitive. So that's 3 consecutive wins over 3 bad teams, each by less than a field goal. But then they trounced the Bills. They beat the hell out of the Bills, 42-16. And then they beat the Texans, who are also not very good this year, 42-36. You know, football, I think more than any other sport, the team that you evaluate in the beginning of the season is not the same as at the end of the season. It's such a physical game. It changes because of injury and just attrition over the course of a season. And with other sports, that's also the same in the sense, well, not that part, but the part where a team gels and finds its rhythm and gets chemistry, good or bad, and learns to play together and know each other. And that can be it can evolve into a different kind of team by the end of the season. But in football, there's that physical element too. The Titans seem to be getting better as the season goes on. If this was a couple of weeks ago and you say, who do I think is going to win, the Steelers or Titans, without any quality? Well, we're not doing that right now, but thank you for playing that. Roger, giving away all our secrets.
Yeah, just, I was going down memory lane. I'm just doing my thing, checking my fantasy team, and, know.
No. Well, checking the fantasy team is all good, but don't play the cheesy top 10 cheesy game show theme song. You're giving it away. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, but the Titans are getting better. Now, so are the Steelers. The Steelers played their most impressive game of the season against the Browns in their last game. On the other hand, the Browns were not able to get it done against either the Ravens or the Steelers. Now, I know the Bills fell against the Chiefs, but everyone falls against the Chiefs. I think all things considered, it's a really good matchup, and it's going to come down to, is Ryan Tannehill really an MVP candidate, or is he riding a running game and defense? As by the way, that's fine. He could be a game manager, big on third down. You can win a Super Bowl that way. But if you really want to know where Ryan Tannehill is, this will be the game to tell you. We know Roethlisberger hasn't looked great either. He's 112 years old, and he's coming off a catastrophic injury. And Roethlisberger has some really interesting. Can Ryan Tannehill win it for Tennessee? We know the Steelers are going to load up against Derrick Henry. Can Tannehill win it? Well, I can't even play. Can I play some Tomlin sound? I'd like to play a little Tomlin sound.
No, you loved your voice so much that we ran out of time. So now you got to.
Coming up, I'm going to play the Tomlin sound coming up, one way or another.
Fine.
Then I'm going to get to Last Take. People can call in, 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. So busy, so distracted by Raj, for some reason, playing the top 10 cheesy game show theme music. Businesses have failed to be flexible. Have had